I think it's time to get started. How's everybody doing? Grueling, isn't it? Session to session. I think we got one of the the brighter areas of the venue here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's now 3:15. For those of you who just entered in the last few minutes, fill out the cards on your seat. Place them in the plexiglass box in the back. We'll be giving away an Xbox 360 at the end of the session. Of course, as always, you have to be present to win. So I have with me today, I'm joined by Scott Baker, as part of my product management team for Backup Exec, and Lee Fright, who is a development manager for our virtualization technologies. I learned long ago that I don't know everything, and so I brought the guys who do. Just a little bit about myself before we get started. First of all, you can't see me over the table, so I'll move around here a little bit. I've been with Symantec in its various forms, for quite a while. I guess going on about 12 or 13 years. I started out in IT myself years ago. I think NetWare 3.11 was the last thing I touched. Actually, my MCSE goes back to NT 3.5. And Microsoft has fed my family for years. I'm sure you all have kind of the same experience. So I would like to thank Microsoft for hosting us today, allowing us to come in and talk to you about best practices for Hyper-V. So I want to make this an interactive, useful session. I'm going to go through some content here, talk to you a little bit about kind of how we got to where we are today. Just a bit of an update on Backup Exec, but I want to get into the detail of how best to protect Hyper-V. How many Backup Exec customers do we have in the room today? Fantastic. Another question: which of you would consider yourself a partner or a VAR or a service provider? Anybody? Raise them up. Good. Okay, and I assume the rest of our customers then. Very good. I think we have a little bit of everything for everybody today. But I do want to make an interactive session. We do have folks here that can answer a lot of detailed questions, and I want you to be able to walk out of here knowing a lot more than when you walked in. So let me go ahead and get started. So for those of us who have been in the business a while, this is the world before virtualization, right? The terms high availability didn't mean anything to anybody unless they were running a Solaris box, right? But in the Windows world, certainly life was very physical, and anytime you lost a drive or you had to do migration, it was not the best experience, right? That's just a couple different things, but we figured out, we looked at IBM for lessons, right, in the mainframe space. How can we do things better? And folks like Microsoft, actually, I think this guy here on the far right, it's like, I think there's something better out there somewhere. So something very interesting happened. Anybody who attended came to the Monday session, the VIR 201, talking about 2K8R2, the Hyper-V role, and they throwed up some statistics, which I thought were pretty mind-blowing. So for the three key applications, SharePoint, SQL, Exchange, these are some of the numbers that that Microsoft is running with these particular environments. Those of you in the audience here, who has virtualized all three of these applications in your environment? Very good. Okay, 2 and 1. All right, pretty good mix, good balance. Okay, very good. And Mark Belker from ESG came out and said that Hyper-V is ready for Tier 1 applications. And I can tell you, at least from my perspective, through Backup Exec out in the channel, in customer environments, it is certainly ramping up for us as a business. So it has certainly come of age. And the other advantage, too, you need to consider with Hyper-V is the high availability angle. So combine cluster share volumes with live migration capabilities, and you get a very resilient infrastructure. And it's also very cost effective, right? I think a small and medium business environment finally has access to tools that were relegated to the enterprise for many years, right? Anybody here using CSVs, live migration? Fantastic, right? This is the presentation for you then. So, when thinking about Hyper-V protection, just protection in general with virtualization can bring a lot of questions, right? It does take a little bit of education. Virtualization solves a lot of problems, server consolidation. You have to deal with storage, right? You have to deal with a whole different infrastructure. So how do you look at data protection? What are some of the things that you need to think about? So we're also giving away a couple T-shirts here. Keep things a bit interactive. So all Symantec employees in the room, please stand up. So the first person who identifies who this individual is gets a T-shirt. You got it? Who wins a T-shirt? You don't need to win a T-shirt. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll try a different question. So, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see that. I've got like 50 lights in my eyes. So, he's right there, the guy in the bow tie. Matt Stevenson, he's a member of my product management team. So who's our lucky winner? Thank you. And by the way, these are all larges. If they don't fit, stop by the booth and we'll exchange them for something a little more comfortable. So what are some of the things that you need to think about when you're dealing with Hyper-V protection? Well, like I said, there are other factors you have to take into account. So what are some of the other considerations? Very basic question, but what do you need to protect? Both local and virtual resources. Remote offices, remote sites. Folks here in the room, how many of you have at least one remote site that you have to contend with? Great, yep. It's a problem, right? It's a problem, and the fortunate thing is that technologies like Hyper-V give you a better way to manage it. I was actually really surprised, I don't know if any of you all saw the Target case study that they showed on Monday. Pretty impressive, all the stores, I think it went from like 5 to 7 servers down to 2. That's why my wife comes home with bags full of stuff from Target. Nothing stops her from buying there. So remote sites, certainly a consideration that you want to take into account. But backup is one thing. Recovery is why we back up, right? So what are your goals? You need to look at, again, what you need to protect and look at them from a tiered basis, right? How important are certain applications to your business? What if a server goes out a remote site? What's your plan to get that back up and running? And there's also organizational expectations. The folks in finance may have different requirements than sales, than product management, than engineering, right? You need to take that into account and understand what they're expecting, right? If they lose a file, an email, or an entire system, you need to take that into account. And then, this is a bit of a dirty laundry item, DR plan. Who in the room here would say that they have a DR plan, a solid DR plan in place? We do an SMB study every year, and DR planning is like one of the scariest things for SMBs in general. I tell you, there's plenty of enterprises out there that don't have a solid plan either. But hopefully today I can give all of you some information. We can have a bit of a dialogue here on some low cost, easy things that you can do to put get a plan in place. That's the ultimate question. Who does DR testing? Yeah. Okay. So, again, this is where virtualization, with technologies like Hyper-V, can give you the economy of scale that you need to deal with situations like that. And then the question is how much bandwidth do you have in order to manage data protection? Let me see all the hands here who are 100% virtual. There's a lot to do these days, right? And I'm sure you're not getting any more budget to do anything else, but you're asked to be probably doing more strategic things around the business, right? Optimizing our ERP, CRM. The last thing you want to do is have to fiddle with backup. So, is your time better spent on other priorities? Now, one thing, our success as a product I can really thank our partners over the years for getting us to that point. But those same partners are out there building practices right now around managed services, around building private clouds and providing data protection. Who of you in the room leverage? Who has a partner that manages their data protection for them? Anybody? Okay. It's something you might want to consider. The economics are there these days, and there are a lot of partners out there willing to take over and be that specialist so that you can go focus on other things. Oops. And then finally, the budgetary realities. Hyper-V, again, will help you stretch your dollar a lot further. And when it comes to data protection, you'll be able to do things, like putting in place recovery testing, for example, that you weren't able to do before. What else? Did I miss anything here? Something else that people should consider when putting together a data protection plan? Physical locations. And maybe how you provide redundancy for the other. Yep. Bandwidth is probably your biggest challenge, right? Yep. So when you're dealing, since I only saw like 2 hands for all virtual, how many solutions do you want to manage during the day, right? Do you want 2? Do you want 1? Do you want more? Ideally, the fewer the better. In addition, you have to take into account all the money that you're spending on like backup agents, that type of thing. Before, in a classic sense, you're always having to buy an agent for every machine. You should be looking for solutions in a virtual environment that kind of eliminate that restriction. You pay one price, and you can protect unlimited amounts of virtual machines, right? Especially if an environment grows and shrinks, based on its needs. And then also, you have storage requirements. It's not just about preparing for disaster. Who here spends more time recovering a single file or an email than, let's say, doing DR of a server? Who spends more time doing DR of a server? See, that's the thing. It does take a lot of time, and if you want that level of protection, you're going to want a solution that allows you to solve all those problems without having to consume an inordinate amount of storage space. Other considerations, right? Who here is still spinning tape? Yep. At least 50% of BE customers today are still using tape as a primary backup destination. Tape, I don't know, it's been declared dead for years, right? But you know what? It solves a problem, and it's cheap, and reliability has gone up tremendously over the years. It hasn't let you down once? And I think that the proof is in the pudding, right? There's no better way, especially if you're bandwidth restricted, to get data off-site, right? But disk is certainly becoming an affordable way, especially for large-scale recoveries, to get back quickly, right? And even to go, fish out files and emails, that type of thing. But the interesting thing is, with virtualization, you can create more storage, especially if you have remote sites. Deduplication has been just kind of a banner technology over the past few years. It really made an impact in the enterprise. Coming downstream into the SMB, because small and medium businesses have to deal kind of with the same challenges, right? So deduplication is an option. And then cloud storage. Are you tired of putting that tape in your boss's trunk as he puts the golf clubs on it, cracks it, right? Not a real reliable DR strategy. Maybe you've got the big trucks coming every week to pick up your tapes. What is cloud? How can the cloud help you solve that offsite problem? Anybody here using any cloud solutions to get data offsite right now? One. What's that? Twice? Price is still an issue. Is price or performance an issue? Actually, both. Okay. I would agree with you. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that's evolving, and are we going to be able to get to a point where it does make a lot of sense from a price and performance perspective? I've already talked about this before, but if you do have granular recovery needs, you want a solution that's going to be able to index things immediately as you're doing a full system backup. Otherwise, you'd be causing yourself quite a bit of a storage challenge there. And so on the topic of granularity, what are your requirements there? Is it a full VHD? entire VM, files, folders, Exchange, objects, what have you. You need to choose a solution that allows you to get at any of that data with only touching it once. So let me transition now to the backup exec, our approach to protecting Hyper-V environments. So I have a question for T-shirt. When did backup exec, what version do we introduce our Hyper-V agent? That's the man right there. Yeah. Nice. With a popsicle on the other hand. Very good. So I had to put the brag sheet up just because I had to put the brag sheet up. But how many of you have been backup exec customers for more than 5 years? 10 years? Longer than 10? Thank you. Appreciate it. We are still the market-leading product by market share. We really strive to make sure that we have a quality product, we have a great support organization, and that we're giving you all the things that you need to get your job done. In addition, I can't stress the channel as well. We depend on the channel. I want to make sure that they're successful. And as far as make the move to managed services and building private clouds, I'm going to make sure that our product is right there, alongside with them. So enough of the brag sheet. Anybody here attend our Vision event 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas? If not, you should come. 2 weeks ago, we announced Backup Exec 2010 R3, an update to Backup Exec 2010, which we introduced our integrated deduplication, our integrated archiving, and several other capabilities that lend itself well to the virtualized environment. We also announced later this fall two new products in our franchise: a Backup Exec appliance, our Backup Exec 3600. All you can eat functionality in a turnkey form factor. We ship them for net backup right now. But we will be making our foray into the appliance space this fall. In addition, we are taking Backup Exec to the cloud with our Backup Exec.cloud SaaS offering. Anybody here use any SaaS solutions today to protect remote office in your small office at all? Really? Okay. Well, a lot of challenges with that, right? Backup performance, restore performance, reliability. These are all things that we're taking into account as we're building the solution. So if you do have a lot of remote sites, we want to make sure that, hey, instead of putting something on premise, that you could go to the cloud with a trusted Symantec solution. It'll be on our iron, our code, the same trust that you have in Backup Exec, we're going to take to the cloud with BE.cloud, both in the fall. In addition, Backup Exec today, you can write to cloud storage providers like Nirvanix, for example. So if you don't want to put the tapes on the truck, Nirvanix, and we have a couple others in the queue that will allow you to copy your backups into that hybrid cloud environment. But last but not least, for partners out there, we're doing a lot. We're doing deeper integration with remote monitoring and management consoles, level platforms, and Kaseya. So for partners building a practice around data protection, we want to make sure you have the best BE experience with all these technologies. And we have other ones as well that we're working on. So since a lot of you weren't actually any of you weren't at Vision, we announced our new V-Ray technology. This is a series of technologies that will allow you to see what you're not seeing right now, especially in virtual environments. And we're finding that bad things do happen in the dark. You can't manage, recover, dedupe, protect, any of that unless you have full visibility into that environment. Today, you have bifurcated physical and virtual infrastructures. This promotes things like, you've got multiple tools you have to deal with. You have, again, the storage growth problems, and in addition to having multiple tools, you also have slow recovery problems because you don't have what you need to synthesize all of this together. And so I'll get into now, as we get into our best practices here for Backup Exec, talk about how our V-Ray technology will help you deal with these situations in a virtual environment. So today, with Backup Exec 2010, if you have a Hyper-V environment, you can buy one agent, our Hyper-V agent, that will allow you to protect an unlimited number of guests on each single host. Now, you have to buy one per host, but we don't care how many VMs you're running. And it's a simple way to consume it, and we do this all obviously while the VMs are online and running. How many of you are running our Hyper-V agent today? Good, okay. So this is where the V-Ray technology comes in. One of the benefits that we give you is that as the virtual environment's dynamic, as machines come up or go offline or move, that can kind of wreak havoc with your backup, your data protection plan. We want to make sure that you have something in place that can track those machines as they move around. And so that's where our V-Ray technology will dynamically balance the protection schemes in order to deal with those particular situations. Now, with this agent, we do bring an image level protection scheme to Backup Exec. And I've alluded to this before, but with a single pass backup, you can recover from any granularity, okay? Individual files to the whole VM. And it doesn't matter if you have tape, you have disk, dedupe, appliances, what have you. You can leverage this technology to do that. Yes, sir? It runs in the host. Now, we'll actually be getting to that here in a minute, but I'll just give you a sneak preview where you can protect each VM without actually having to put an agent in the guest. However, in order to get the benefits of our granular recovery technology, you'll have to place the agent there just for purposes of collecting metadata, but the backups will be done at the whole VM level. You want to take that one?
Yeah. So with Server Core, there's no support. You couldn't install the Backup Exec agent on Server Core because there's no actual user interface for us. Leif, now the actual remote agent, can it be installed on Server Core? I know the media server can't, but I wasn't sure if remote agent can. Remote agent can be? Okay. Does it as far as? Right. Okay. So sorry guys. Wow. So yeah, you can install the remote agent. Who was it that said that asked the question? Okay. So yeah, the remote agent itself could be installed on Server Core. Okay, but as far as the media server itself, it couldn't. So you'd end up being doing remote backups. Obviously, you get better performance if you have the media server on the Hyper-V host, but it would still be possible if you're running a Server Core and you have the remote agent installed on it.
The gentleman had a question in the back. So the question is, we're backing data up off the LUN. Is that data going to the media server and then to tape? Everything has to be processed through the Backup Exec server to do that. I'm sorry, I can't hear you back there. It does go through the Hyper-V host, yes. That is correct. Yes, sir. So the question is, when you're going from tape to disk, does it have to go over the network or can it go over the SAN?
It's going to come from the Hyper-V host. So if Backup Exec is installed on the Hyper-V host, it's basically just going to be reaching out and the data is going to be delivered directly to Backup Exec on the Hyper-V host. Now, if Backup Exec is installed on a remote machine, we're still going to be communicating with the Hyper-V host. The data is going to actually come from the Hyper-V host itself. So it would come from the Hyper-V host. It would be looking at the actual snap of the virtual machine, and it would be sending us the data, and it would come across the IP network. That make sense? Okay.
I'll try to repeat the questions if they can't get to it. So, yeah. So, if you do have a question, don't be afraid of the mics. Otherwise, I'll repeat the question for the audience. And so, on the topic of tape and disk and such, so disk to disk to tape is probably one of our more popular combinations, right? Where you're going to disk first so that you have your latest and greatest data sets available for recovery, and then you're going to tape for the longer-term archiving offsite capabilities. Now, you can eliminate or dramatically reduce the tape aspect by leveraging deduplication. So you may have, go to disk first and then go to what we call our deduplication store, and that will allow you to, lock up a large amount of mass data, into our database there, and keep that for longer term retention. I'll get to you in just a second. And as soon as that, you can also leverage that dedupe to do other interesting things, especially to help the remote office. So your question, sir.
Speaking about the remote office, I use deduplication in several remote offices. Back to my office, deduplication local and deduplicate back in my office on the file server. And of course, I'm only duplicating every day when it's changed. How does that affect the Hyper-V host, knowing that there can be changes there? And I've got a Hyper-V host backup for a Hyper-V client that's this large.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer moving a small amount of data. Does it still do the same thing where it's only going to move what's changed since the last backup of that client?
Right. So it's. Let me get
past the speaker. You might want to stay out here with me.
Yeah, really. So the it'll treat the VHD as if it's a single file, and it will deduplicate against the VHD. So if we're backing up a virtual machine that has several VHDs, it's going to examine each VHD. It's going to perform its deduplication process on it. It's going to look for those repeating segments. Okay, so it's not necessarily looking at whether or not the file has specifically changed, but it's going to be whatever data has been selected for backup is going to be analyzed, and then it's going to be broken down into segments, and those unique segments will be sent across to the deduplication storage pool. Think of the same exact process if you're going from one deduplication storage folder to another deduplication storage folder. Right. So the same process is going to take place. The source deduplication storage folder is going to function like a deduplication client. It'll communicate with the target deduplication storage folder, that specific BACK media server. It'll communicate with it. It'll find what segments already exist on that machine, and it will send only the unique information. The process, we call it OpDup. It's optimized duplication of deduplicated data. So think of it as one BACK media server functioning like a client, the target media server functioning like the BACK media server, and we're deduplicating it between the two storage folders. Is that covered it?
Yeah. When you take that deduplicated data from, you said in your scenario, disk to disk tape.
Right.
From disk to disk, deduplicated to tape, is it not true that that data is rehydrated to its maximum?
It absolutely is. Yeah. Whenever it goes from
So I can't reduce the amount of tape that I'm using today.
If you're going from disk to tape in that description, absolutely you're correct. Now what we have done is we've exposed the deduplication storage folder as well as the database in a shadow copy component so that you can actually back that up, you can protect it. Correct, yeah, in its entirety. Now that doesn't mean that you can restore application data directly from that backup. What that means is it's more of a disaster recovery type of a solution for that deduplication storage folder and the database that goes along with it, okay? So once you've backed up that storage folder at that point, you've got that data in its entirety so that if you lose that media server, you can rebuild it, you can restore that deduplication storage folder, and your data will be available for recovery back to a physical machine or a virtual machine or whatever it is you need to restore.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on because we actually do get into this a little more detail on optimized duplication. So I want to touch on the CSV support and live migration. Backup Exec does preserve the fidelity of machines in the situation. So if live migration does occur, we're smart enough to follow it around and make sure that we can continue to back it up. It's just one less thing that you have to worry about. Now, on the question of where you put a server, the Backup Exec server, we recommend you install it on the host itself, primarily, especially if you're spinning tape, because if you put it in a VM, you're not going to be able to see that tape device. So put it on the host, and you'll be able to have full, complete protection and coverage with it in that respect. So here's how the backup process works. We do leverage VSS. We start by taking a VSS snapshot right here of the machine, and we transfer that data, that snapshot, across the network and into the Backup Exec ecosystem, which then it makes its way to your storage destination of choice. Afterward, the snapshot's deleted. So we're not doing anything tricky underneath the covers. Again, it's all copacetic, leveraging VSS. Now here's how, again, this is how V-Ray kind of comes into play here, where you can take those full image backups and have full insight into all the data at any level of granularity wherever it may reside, whether, again, where it be disk or tape. And we're finding that through this process, you're cutting down the backup process about 50%, both in time and space consumed. So digging deeper and looking at which we actually just received our patent for our granular recovery technology. This is what it looks like under the covers. We take, as VHDs come across, as the backup exec server is looking at them, it is discovering those files automatically in line with the data. And they're instantly indexing those files and then sending them off to their final destination. You don't have to go back and catalog. You don't have to do any other process in order to do it. But we're doing this all in a single pass backup. And that has a huge value to you, given your recovery scenarios. So these are the considerations, right? I just said it definitely shortens your backup operations. And when it comes to things like in a Hyper-V environment, Exchange SQL Active Directory, we know exactly what kind of data it is. So there's not a lot of, you're not going to have to do a lot of tweaking, again, underneath the covers to make sure that you're getting the right type of granular insight into that data. Gentleman asked a question before, where do I need to install this? Well, if you want this level of insight, you have to install our agent in each guest. But again, the backup is not going through there. It's just simply there to collect the metadata so that we get insight into that. But data will continue to be sent directly, the image directly to the backup exec server. No agent involved. Pretty basic items. The VM needs to be powered on, and you need to have credentials in order to access it. But those are the key things that you'll have to have in place in order to take advantage of that technology. And Scott's going to go into it in detail, kind of walk you through what it looks like. Now, when we look at a deduplication globally, so the V-Ray technology gives us the ability to not only look at a single machine, but an entire protection infrastructure. So, we do, again, the topic here is Hyper-V, but this also applies to that other virtualization software out there, right? So if you do have VMware, you can take advantage of that as well, running your applications in that environment, as well as the physical servers. So it doesn't matter how you've hosted them or running them, you get that insight no matter what, even with full deduplication. Oops. And so on the topic of offsite, this is how it works, where you have a backup exec media server, at your local site, protecting any on-premise data that you have, and you have the option of moving that over a WAN connection, unreliable internet connection even. With backup exec 2010R3, we'll be turning on a feature that will give you the ability to do direct backups over extremely unreliable connections in a remote office, for example. So you won't need to put a backup exec server there anymore. We're calling this our cloud services technology. And it's kind of a first step into backup exec, really being much more private cloud, public cloud friendly. But you can send that to another backup exec server, like for example, our central admin server at a central site, running our deduplication. Or you may have a NetBackup 5000 appliance. Are there any NetBackup customers in here at all? Okay. Yeah, so if you do have NetBackup in place, we can write to those deduplication stores as well. Sorry, this is backwards. I'm having a hard time with the order here. So let's talk about the optimized duplication, especially in a remote office situation. This is, we have a term called a set copy. It allows you to copy a backup set to a different destination. With OpDup, it's highly optimized for the remote office environment. We don't do any of the rehydration. It's only new segment coverage as deduplication should. And you can see up to a 90% increase in performance in moving data from A to B. So who's doing that right now? Anybody? The gentleman who asked the question. So it can make a big difference, and it's an automatic DR strategy built in for you. And so our open storage technology, OST, this is a standard that we have to interface with third-party appliances out there. And so what we do support, again, along with the NetBackup 5000 series, if you have an Exagrid, if you have a data domain, or if you have a quantum device, You know, we can see those, take advantage of all the special capabilities of that hardware, and use them as part of that optimized duplication ecosystem. Anybody in here running any of these items right now? Okay, yep. Did you finish your popsicle? Okay. So for large implementations, you know, Backup Exec has this concept of a central admin server that allows you, you know, a central point of control and to distribute your managed media servers to different locations where you can essentially administer, you know, all of your jobs. And obviously at the top, you'll have centralized ability to monitor, in addition to managing all of the replicated data as it goes from site to site. It's available as an add-on option to Backup Exec. So that's that. Actually, let me ask another question here. Let's get another T-shirt out there. When did we first introduce our granular recovery technology into the product? What version? Let me see some hands here. Who's gonna get it out there? Anyone? Anyone? 8? No, it's not 8. Definitely not 7. It's yes, sir. No. Granular store for exchange. Yes.
That would be 10 or 11. Or 9.5 or something like that, but I know it was
Leaf, what's our answer, man? Is it I set him up for this one, so we're going to go with 11D, right? 11D is when we introduced that technology. So who was the guy? Actually, here, we got 2 T-shirts then. Was it this gentleman right here? Yeah, I think there was another one right here. There you go. We got more where these came from. So, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir. And Scott's actually going to walk you through how to configure our Hyper-V protection.
We got a forward and reverse. Does forward actually go forward?
It actually does, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, I actually had a couple of questions I want to ask before we got started. There were a couple of points that were brought up that kind of caught me by surprise. So a fair number of you out there have Backup Exec in your environment, and I'm assuming that most all, if not all of you, have Hyper-V in your environment. But whenever we asked how many of you have our Hyper-V agent, I think there was only a handful of people whose hands went up. So is there anybody out there that would be willing to share with me, if you have Backup Exec and you have Hyper-V, but you don't have the Backup Exec Hyper-V agent, how are you protecting those virtual machines? Anybody out there willing to tell me what they're doing? Are you treating them like physical machines?
I'll tell you what we did before about the Hyper-V agent.
Okay.
We shut the machines down after hours, copy the VMs, and just back those up flat files.
It's flat files? Gotcha. Anybody else doing the same thing?
Equalogic.
Okay.
I'm using Equalogic snapshot.
Okay, just snapshots? Gotcha. So the cost of the Hyper-V agent is essentially the same cost as if you were purchasing a remote agent for 3 of your virtual machines. So for the cost of 3 remote agents, you could have the Hyper-V agent to protect every single one of your virtual machines. The other question I had was around deduplication. So there was a little bit of conversation about deduplication. How many of y'all have deduplication in your environment, Backup Exec deduplication? How many of y'all knew that we added deduplication to Backup Exec in 2010, back about a year ago? So, okay. So is that something that, as far as the people who had never heard of it, something you'd be interested in hearing about relative, say, a remote WebEx session or something like that?
Yeah, it would be nice.
Okay, so maybe we ought to talk to the RPMs about having some kind of a session for that. So. Oh, are they? Where do we go? They're back in the back? Keith? Keith, you want to do a, no? Can't do it? No, can't do it? So I've got 2 hands here. I got my laser, which I'm not quite sure how well that will work, but it'll make me feel good to point out things. So, and then the fast and the forward and the reverse. So this is basically it's a walkthrough as far as what you're going to go through in Backup Exec to create a backup job, what the job log is going to look like, and what you'll see as far as restore selection. So one of the things that we really talked about earlier was, the ability to do a single pass backup with multiple ways of restoring this data. So we'll start off in Backup Exec. It's pretty simple. You start off here. You click on, as far as Backup Exec 2010 goes, you got backup. You click on the backup button, the little fast there drops down, and you select new backup job. From here, within backup exec, we have our traditional screen. So we have our backup job properties. We're into our selections. So in this case, what we have is the Hyper-V server is not the backup exec media server. So you can see up here at the top, media server's name is QA-ESX and so forth. And then a little bit further down underneath, we have our favorite resources, and underneath favorite resources, we have our Windows Systems node. And we've added in our Hyper-V server listed here. So whenever I select my Hyper-V server here, I see its contents over on the right-hand side. So you can see I have the local C drive, Microsoft Hyper-V node, the Shadow Copy Components node, and the system state. So drilling down, once we get down here, we've drilled down into the Microsoft Hyper-V. We see we have a couple of items available. We have the initial store and we have our virtual machines. As we drill down, you can see I've expanded out the tree here. So we get down to the initial store and we drill all the way down to the final folder. And you see up here we have the initial store.xml. What happens if you don't have that file? Bad things happen? You're able to actually do any kind of management? You're able to get into it? So that's your authorization file. So we protect that. We also get down and we get into our virtual machines, and this is our virtual machine here. So LM-SPS 2010 SQL. So we've gone down into we've gone from our backup exec media server down to our Hyper-V host, LMD Serve 3. We get down into our virtual machine, LM-SPS 2010, and you can see we got it selected. As we expand it out, we're still in the backup job properties. As we expand it out, we get down and you can see how we've divided up. We've got the snapshots protected, we've got the BHDs protected, and we've got the virtual machine files protected. So everything that you need as far as being able to protect this particular virtual machine is selected when you select it to the root node. Additionally, if you select if you check mark the Microsoft Hyper-V server up here at the top and you select everything that goes beneath it, and you've clustered your systems, you've got your clustered Microsoft clusters shared volumes. If a virtual machine moves from one node to another node, it will still be protected. So we're basically treating that root node kind of like a folder. When you add files to a folder, they get automatically protected. If you add a new virtual machine, it'll get automatically protected. Some of the backup job properties, so we got selected the Microsoft Hyper-V item right here, and you can see some of the options that are selected. You notice that backup method right now is grayed out. It's only set to full. Right now, that's the only method that's available. Hyper-V doesn't actually allow us at this point to do any kind of incremental backups. That will be changing in future versions, but we can move on. We also have exclude virtual machines that must be put in a save state to backup. So there is criteria for a virtual machine, if it's running virtual machine, in which it can't necessarily be backed up online. There are certain criteria, and we actually call it out in the administration's guide. Some of it has to do with things that need to be installed. Some of it has to do with the version of the operating system. We can also back up virtual machines that are powered off. And then the last item here, use backup exec granular recovery technology. Our acronym is GRT. And then the three different applications that we, I'm sorry, somebody have a question? Okay, thought I heard something. The three applications that we support as far as doing application level backups are Active Directory, SQL, and Exchange. So what that means is, you virtualized any one of those three applications. Whenever we do the Hyper-V level backup, okay, we'll also be able to, when it comes to restore time, we'll be able to restore that application data without ever actually having run an application backup. So we've never run an Exchange backup, but yet we can restore the Exchange information store. We can restore an individual mailbox. We can restore an individual mail item. We can restore an attachment.
I think you had a question.
Did we? So, okay.
Yeah, I know we're Microsoft guys, but I have to run Linux Red Hat on Hyper-V for my Drupal website server. Does the agent able to granular do restore for the Linux?
Yeah, the man in front of you is shaking his head no, and he's correct. T-shirt? But yeah, he's right. Yeah, there's no granular recovery for Linux at this point. So question for you, how many people out there are running Linux in their Hyper-V environments? If you don't mind, I literally really would like to know how many, if you could raise it up so I could literally count yourselves. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. So as far as the, so the application, so Active Directory and Exchange, so I kind of described Exchange. SQL, we can, we'll back up SQL. You'll be able to restore individual databases, and we'll end up taking a look because the backup job that I performed was at an SQL server, so we'll be able to see the databases that are available for recovery as well. In addition to that, the ability to recover Microsoft Active Directory objects. So most everybody here is in a, probably in a Microsoft environment. You've probably got Active Directory. How many of y'all have the Active Directory agent? How many of y'all are familiar with what the Active Directory agent does? Okay, so what it does is, whenever you're doing a backup of the system, say it's a domain controller, it gets all the information about Active Directory so that if you end up losing an object, whatever that object may be, you can use backup exec to restore it. You don't have to go through NTDS util to do anything such as, reboot into directory services recovery mode and restore the individual item and then run an authoritative restore. Backup exec will simply pump it back into Active Directory for you. No, at that point you're done. So the ability to recover these individual objects from a virtualized domain controller. As far as virtualized domain controllers, you had a question?
How does that work with the recycle bin in 2008 R2 for AD?
Well, if it's there, we'll reanimate it.
Okay.
Yep.
So you'll just pull it right out of the recycle bin?
Right, generally speaking, sure. How many of y'all have virtualized Active Directory domain controllers? Quite a few of you. Okay, fantastic. So if this screen pops up, let me go back. And this screen, when you click on the edit button, that's where this screen comes up. So if for some reason, whatever the case may be, you don't want to perform granular recovery of your applications, I'm not quite sure when that might fit the scenario, but you can individually deselect the items so that you don't have to do that.
Are any of these features going to be rolled into NetBackup?
Why would we do that? Right. So,
I mean,
yeah.
Two products are in different spaces.
Yeah, they are.
NetBackup's more of an enterprise.
Right. There's some sharing between the engineering teams, obviously, back and forth. At some point they will. They've tried to go off and do some things on their own whenever we had the Windows technology and it didn't work too well for them, such as their SharePoint agent. They had some trouble with their SharePoint agent, and then we helped them out and got it fixed.
Over the past 2 years, since we were put together in the same actual group in Symantec, what a concept. We've had a tremendous amount of technology sharing. So around applications, virtualization, dedupe, everything. I mean, Leaf worked as part of that team for both NetBackup and Backup Exec. So we will continue to see a lot more product releases that the feature sets should match. So we're getting better. We're getting better. There you go.
Yeah.
Does that technology work for SharePoint?
Today, no, but tomorrow, yes. When I say tomorrow, that's something that's on the roadmap. It is planned. Absolutely. SharePoint, yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's a roadmap item, and it's a staple in everybody's environment. We just haven't got there yet, but we'll be there tomorrow. So as far as going through the too far. Kind of rolling back. So what I'd done, as far as the walkthrough goes, gone through and I've selected my virtual machine, gone through and configured my options. At this point, I've run my backup job, and so the backup job will show the information. What I selected here was the top part because it actually shows the byte count, and then it also shows the files and the directories. So even though I only backed up the individual virtual machine, which would have made up by a limited number of files that actually makes up the virtual machine itself, it actually shows you the number of files and directories as well as the actual byte count. So when we're doing the indexing, the information is telling us how many files and directories that we're actually backing up. Any questions on what we've covered so far? Sure.
I just wanted to have you clarify.
Okay.
The licensing. You said granular restore technology. You have to put the agent on the guest.
Okay.
And you have to have the Hyper-V agent. But previous to that, you said I can protect unlimited amount of Hyper-V agents, Hyper-V guests on one Hyper-V host by pinning proxy tree.
Right.
But to get granular technology, you have to buy the Hyper-V agent plus all the agents for all your guests. Correct?
Well, not exactly. Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't mean to cover that. So the granular recovery capabilities, so we have two different levels, right? We have the actual file and folder granular recovery, and we have application level granular recovery. So, yes, yep, SQL Active Directory Exchange. So to be able to do just file and folder granular recovery, there's no additional cost, okay? And you can deploy the agent inside the virtual machines or not. In order to do file level granular recovery, we do not need the agent in the virtual machine for file level, okay? Now, where we need the agent inside the virtual machine is where you have Active Directory, SQL, and Exchange. Okay? What happens is whenever the backup kicks off, we'll communicate with the Hyper-V host. Hyper-V host will quiesce. It'll also quiesce the virtual machines, and it will also quiesce their applications. Okay? That then tells that quiescence of the virtual machine and the application is what the BACXEC remote agent inside that virtual machine is keying on. Okay? Once that happens, the BACXEC remote agent will then look at the application, and it will then send over that metadata, Exchange, SQL, Active Directory. So it'll send over the metadata about the application that's being protected so that BACXEC can have it in its catalogs. Okay? So if you have virtualized those applications, you do need the agent. You would need to purchase the Exchange agent, the Active Directory agent, the SQL agent in order to get that application level granular recovery. So that was a long way to get there, but yeah.
Web servers with SQL on them, I have half a dozen that are virtualized on one host. They all have SQL on it. Yeah, that's probably not the best way to do it, but that's the way our developers did it.
Gotcha.
Just looking at licensing guys, my Hyper-V and 6 more.
SQLs. Right. Yeah, in your case, to be honest with you, it's probably a wash. It's probably not necessarily going to be a money-saving opportunity for you because the SQL agent comes with the remote agent license built into it. But if you go beyond that, if something else is virtualized, you exceed say maybe 3 more servers, then it's definitely something to consider. So
for clarification, if you have the SQL agent running on the VM, when the backup is happening, does it talk to the Hyper-V agent, or does it talk to the backup?
the remote agent inside the VM, right? It'll actually do both, okay? It'll do both. The thing is, none of the data will come from the BACXEC remote agent inside the virtual machine. It'll only be the application metadata. So it'll be the information about SQL or the information about Exchange. So, imagine all the mailboxes inside an information store, okay? In order for us to be able to have that information in the catalogs, we actually have to communicate with Exchange to get that information sent to us, as opposed to the information store itself. So.
And if you don't have it, you basically have to shut down the SQL service during backup.
Well, not necessarily, because whenever we're communicating with the Hyper-V host will then communicate with the virtual machine inside, and it will communicate with the tools, and the tools will then quiesce the virtual machine and also quiesce any VSS-aware applications. Okay, so VSS-aware applications would be crash consistent. You just wouldn't necessarily be able to have that insight into, say, the databases that were backed up. You could still go in and you could, select the MDFs and LDFs that made up a database and restore them. They would be crash consistent as long as the VSS was able to quiesce them and commit transactions, which they should be able to do.
So you full restore, but not the granular restore.
Right. And I mean, you could almost, well, don't want to get to that point.
Restore it somewhere else.
You know where I was going with it, didn't you?
Hey, Scott, do me a favor.
Yeah, we got to speed up.
When folks ask the question, if you could repeat it.
I'm sorry.
This is being recorded, and
Gotcha.
folks in the back might not be able to hear. So,
Yep.
thanks.
I would
There's
repeat
a
his
question
question,
over
but-
here.
Yes.
I may have missed this earlier, but did you say that you can install a Hyper-V agent on a server 4, the Windows Server 2004?
No, so what you'd have is you would have to install the BACXEC remote agent onto server core, and then your BACXEC server would be another machine that is not server core. The reason being is because there's no interface, and BACXEC needs the interface, but the remote agent does. I'm sorry, I should have repeated this. The question was why can't we have BACXEC installed on server core, and how do you handle that? So it was, you put the remote agent into server core, and there's a command line utility that will allow you to configure it, and then your BACXEC server would be another machine that is not server core that has a user interface where you could run BACXEC, communicate with the server core machine to be able to configure the backups.
I asked this question because I have 4 clusters, each with Windows sharing a CSV.
Okay.
Will this work?
Yeah, it should. I mean, I can't think of any reason. Yeah. So, yeah. So he's several. Really? I hate to sound ignorant, but really? What excuse did they give you?
Because they said that there's no support for server 4.
I did not know they didn't support server core. Did you know they don't support server core? At backup?
You can't put the media server on there.
Right. On their client? We're not sure. Yeah.
Net backup agent for server 4?
Right.
What version of net backup?
7.0.
7.0.
Don't remember if it's supported or not.
For having the agent inside Server Core? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I never had anybody ask. I was an SE up until about well, the beginning of the year whenever I transitioned onto the product manager team. And I mean, I talked about NetBackup quite a bit, but never got to the point where people were questioning about having Server Core and having the user interface or so forth. So, but anyway, yeah. Sure. Get through.
We've allocated time for Q&A at the end here.
So we get into the restore job properties. The job is run, and you can see as far as what we have on a restore operation. I'm sorry, a restore selections window. We've got two different displays. So the LMDV SRv3. This is the Hyper-V host itself. Okay, so into the Hyper-V host, we've drilled down. We get into our Hyper-V node, our virtual machines. Underneath our virtual machines, we see the virtual machine that we backed up, LMSPS 2010 SQL. Then it shows the backup job when it took place, and we drew it out into the C and the VM, the snapshot. So you recognize this directory structure from whenever we created the backup job. Looking over on the right-hand side, you can see the files that are available. So the individual files that make up the virtual machine are available for recovery. So if you didn't have the agent, the Hyper-V agent, okay, this is all you would have available if you were going to be backing up that Hyper-V host, and you had gone through the process of making sure that all your virtual machines were shut down and we're in a crash-consistent state for backup. Now, if we move forward, you can see right here, so directly above the line, this is where it shows the Hyper-V host, but inside my box here, this is where it shows LMSPS 2010 SQL. So this particular machine, this is displayed by virtue of the same exact backup. So I ran that one backup. The restore selections show both the Hyper-V host available for restoring the Hyper-V machine at the Hyper-V, I'm sorry, at the virtual machine level. This one shows it as if it was backed up at the NetBIOS level or at the machine name level. So we got the C drive. It shows the backup date and time, and then we see the directory structure. And you can see, over here I've selected the users directory. But this shows you, again, a single pass backup and the granular level capabilities. This is the file level granular level capabilities. If you have the SQL agent, then we also have this available. So as I drill down a bit further, I show Microsoft SQL Server, SQL 2008, and I see my databases available. I got the master model, MSDB, and then my different test databases, user DB1 through 5. So again, this would be, you would have had the Hyper-V agent as well as the SQL agent. So depending on what your environment is, this is definitely something where you could take advantage and really eliminate some of those backup jobs. The ability to have a single job, recover the entire virtual machine, recover individual files and folders, recover granularly the individual pieces of data for applications that we support. Some of the restore job properties that are available, so I've selected my Hyper-V node here. I've already gone through my selections. So some of the options that are available: overwrite a powered-on virtual machine. You have to be in a pretty desperate state to actually do that, to restore over a powered-on virtual machine, but it's possible. Some of the other options, once you do a restore operation, do not turn the virtual machine on. Turn on the virtual machine and resume it from the available save state, or discard the available save state. And if you're going to do a redirection, so we have the opportunity to do redirected restores as well. You can see we've selected it here. So you've got redirect your Hyper-V sets. Select your Hyper-V server. What logon account are you going to be used? What's your restore drive? What's your restore path? And so we got redirect to a different Hyper-V host and register the virtual machine, or just redirect it to a folder state. So pretty powerful options as far as being able to restore the state that you want to restore it to, what Hyper-V host you want to restore it to, and some of the track resources as far as some of the places where you can get your information. So, Jason, you want to?
Exact.com is your one-stop shop for everything.
I'm afraid I'm going to. I know, that's why I was concerned about how far I walked over there.
Actually, I'm going to go hide behind the table now.
Right.
Our SCL, HCL, great resource for you. And then also we have a Hyper-V solution brief out there. Touched on a lot of the topics that we discussed today. And as always, you can find our backup exec support team at that location. And I'm sure all of you have seen this slide. Would appreciate you complete an evaluation to win. But before we get to the drawing, so first of all, if you haven't turned in your card that was on your chair, make sure you give it to Susie back there. She's coming down the aisle. We'll get your name in the box so we can do that Xbox drawing.
Jason, can I ask one question of the group?
Yeah.
Real quick, do you mind? Okay, so something that I meant to ask as well whenever I got started was, Relative to your deployments on your Hyper-V hosts, generally speaking, okay, I tell you what, let's do it this way. As far as people who have the number of virtual machines per host, if you have from 1 to 5 virtual machines per host, could you raise your hand? 5 to 10 virtual machines? Beyond 10? Okay, thank you so much, we appreciate it. What?
How many hosts?
How many hosts? Oh, approximately how many hosts? I mean, let's say from 1 to 2, how many have 1 to 2 Hyper-V hosts? 2 to 5? More than 5?
Okay, so time for the last T-shirt. So I thought about which question I'm going to ask. However, we have, at Vision, we kind of gave a sneak peek of our next version of Back of Exec. Who in the audience could tell me, what is that version going to be called? Nope. I heard a 12. Who said 12 out there? Just 2012. So I think you were the guy I heard, right? If you didn't get a T-shirt, come see us at the booth, and we'll fix you up. Yes.
Here's my question. I'm running a bunch of separate media server in my environment. I'm looking to more or less have one media server for all my environment and just put remote hosts on all the other server. Should I be looking at net backup or backup exec? That's always my confusion.
Well, I mean, we'd be happy to have a deeper conversation with you after the session, if that's okay. So, we want to go ahead. We have everybody's cards there. Got one more coming. So, folks, Back of Exec 2012 is the next upcoming major release of Back of Exec. Still targeted in the future. Be looking for us for a beta coming this summer, and we're really changing a lot of things around the product to make your lives easier. You did. Would you?
Yeah, actually last year.
Oh, that's right.
She had a preview last year.
And if you're interested in getting a sneak peek, we have it here with us at our booth. It's on a little paperwork, but Elizabeth would be happy to step you through that. We have kind of re-revolutionized the interface. We are going to be introducing integrated system recovery. Any Symantec system recovery customers out there, Bezer customers? Yeah, all right. You're going to see that make its way into the product as well.
Are you still going to have, sorry for interrupting, you still going to keep Beazer as a separate SKU?
Yes, yeah.
Is there any
But you
plan?
can control it from one man.
From one, it'll be, we talk all about all the single pass stuff. That'll be just another thing that you'll be able to do from one backup, do a system recovery. And also, if you want to convert a physical to a virtual or do virtual replication, that's all going to be in there for you as well. So we'll be looking out for the beta. We'd love to have you participate. So now, are we ready?